Very good evening to all the participants. Youth Bar Association of India has been organizing webinars during the pandemic COVID-19 in order to keep on the process of learning. We had recently concluded an international webinar on mediation, which was organized by the Supreme Court mediators along with Singapore International Mediation Center and Commonwealth Lawyers Association on 27th June 2020. The said session was chaired by Honorable Mr. Justice Sanjay Kishan Paul, Judge Supreme Court of India, wherein all the panelists emphasized on the importance of mediation for budding lawyers. And it was a resounding success as the webinar has more than 27,000 viewers. Taking from there, YBI decided to launch a summer school for 10 days, as proposed by my friend Mr. Rahul Kumar, the national president of our student wing, with the eminent legal luminaries and experts of this field, to best equip the young budding minds with the concept of mediation. The first session was inaugurated by Honorable Justice Kurian Joseph, former Judge Supreme Court of India, and Mr. Jitendra Mohan Sharma, mediator and a senior advocate of Supreme Court of India. The topic was Introduction to Mediation and ADR. Justice Kurian Joseph, who has a passion for mediation, gave a very interesting example to understand the mediation. Justice Kurian Joseph gave an example that where two parties are fighting over an orange. Luckily, they went through the process of mediation. The mediator asked them why you both want orange. One party expressed the desire to make orange juice, while the other desired to take muffins from the peel of the orange. The parties, with the help of mediators, settled the matter by allowing one party to make the juice, giving the leftover peel to the other party to bake makings. By asking what people in dispute want, a mediator is able to locate resources more efficiently without waste, making everyone more satisfied with the outcome. Had these parties availed the process of adjudication, there were two possible outcomes. One, to give the orange to either party. Second, to equally divide it among them, which would have not sufficed the true purpose of both the parties. Moving on, the next session was held by Dr. Rajesh Bhavna, Vice Chancellor, Uttaranchal University. He focused on the evolution of ADR. The topic ADR was canvassed. The participants were educated about the methodology to explain ADR, techniques of ADR, and why should one opt for ADR. He, in a very simple manner, explained the concept of ADR through slides, which was quite interesting for all of us. The third session was taken by Mr. R. Santhanan Krishnan. Sir is a senior mediator and an advocate in Supreme Court of India. He highlighted the topic understanding the conflict and concept of mediation. He explained the term conflict that can be of various types. It can be present in every sphere of life. He, by way of a slide, showed us a settlement document which relates to about 500 years ago, in which great poet Tulsidas ji was appointed as an arbitrator, in which Tulsidas ji was popularly also known as Madhyastha. Moving ahead, we had a fourth session with Mr. Jitendra Mohan Sharma, senior advocate and a mediator, on the topic process and stages of mediation. He educated us that in India there is court annexed mediation. Then he spoke about the pre-litigation mediation and explained the process of mediation. The keynote words from his session were, he advocated that the process of mediation never fails and shared his experience as a mediator and suggested that in case the parties do not arrive to a settlement, he still submits a report with remarks, mediation failed at this stage, which leaves the scope of mediation alive. Our fifth session was taken by Senior Advocate Mr. Rakesh Kumar Khanna, a mediator in Supreme Court, on the topic of role of negotiating parties in mediation. He emphasized on how the role of parties is focal point of the whole process. The parties decide the term of settlement and how they will proceed. The mediators only facilitate in formulating their issues, and they assist them in understanding the issues. Fallouts of negotiation, the mediator explains all the positive and negatives that the parties might have to suffer if the mediation is not successful. Ultimately, the parties themselves has to negotiate a settlement and arrive at a settlement. Once the party arrive at a settlement, they are also required to be made understand that what are the best alternative to negotiating agreement. That is the role of the mediator. We call it BATNA, that is best alternative to negotiate agreement. Besides BATNA, there is VATNA, that is worst alternative to negotiating agreement. Last is MALTNA, where most likely alternate to negotiated agreement, that is the most possible outcome. That was a very informative session because these terms were very new for us. The sixth session was taken by Lady Judge Joesh Aluj, former Vice President, International Criminal Court and International Arbitrator, mediator, on the topic role of a mediator towards a successful mediation. She educated the participants about the setting arrangements for mediation. In mediation, a mediator is not a judge or an arbitrator. The difference between mediator, arbitrator, and conciliator were explained. The skills of mediators were spoken about, like active listening, observing, non-verbal communications, matching, use of silence, and minimal verbal prompts, reflecting, paraphrasing, and summarizing. The stages of mediations were proficiently explained. Moving ahead, we had our next session with Mr. Rajiv Datta, senior advocate and a mediator. He spoke on the topic importance and role of lawyers in mediation. He quoted a very famous he spoke about that when he said one must not confuse the light bridges of fashion with the winds of history. He said it is true that the winds of history have been in favor of arbitration. As the winds are changing, we are moving towards mediation, as lawyers are also increasing mediation. He spoke about mediation, how it was introduced. Mediation is accepted in a commercial world. Lawyers, according to him, are one of the most important facets of mediation. Mediation is new, but a fastest growing method. It is speedy, less expensive, and it is practical. It respects all relationships. Lawyers also represent clients in mediation, so the role changes. Then we had our special session. The special session, which was taken up by Justice Lokpal Singh, Judge, Uttarakhand High Court, and Senior Advocate Mr. KTS Tulsi, on the very interesting topic that was plea bargaining and scope of mediation in criminal matters. Mr. KTS Tulsi, who is also a member of Parliament, educated us about Chapter 21A of CRPC to understand the process of plea bargaining comprehensively with the help of slides. Justice Lokpal Singh explained it in a very simple words and suggested that the concept of mediation has been inherited by us from our ancestors. To make us understand the concept of plea bargaining, he gave a very simple example of a mother asking her child to confess his guilt to get lesser punishment. Otherwise, the child would be punished harshly. He had also expressed his view regarding compounding of the offenses through the process of mediation. Moving ahead, we had a 8th session with Mr. Bran Spears. Mr. Bran Spears is the president of Commonwealth Lawyers Association on the topic cross-border mediation. When it comes to mediation, Mr. Bran Spears is well recognized. He spoke us about the European cross-border directives and the Singapore conventions. He said that cross-border mediation is very much a part of international global trading that we are all growing up with and experiencing. The 9th session was taken by Ju Lin. He is Deputy Chief Executive Officer of Singapore International Mediation Center on the topic pre-litigation mediation and med-up. So before I conclude the last session, I must say that his session was very educative and informative, as he told us about the scope of pre-litigation mediation and its method. Moving ahead, the ninth session was taken by the Mr. Sriram Panchu, a name which requires no introduction when it comes to mediation. He spoke us on the topic of Singapore Conventions on mediation. His words are always a guiding factor. He explained very nicely on the topic and satisfied the queries of the participants, which was in fact beyond the scope of his topic. He also praised the recent petition filed by Youth Bar Association of India for establishment of pre-litigation mediation centers in all courts, and has given his valuable suggestions regarding the same. Now, before I give my point of view on the subject, I request the moderator for today, Ms. Shweta Pandey, to take over and facilitate our speakers.
Thank you, sir. A pleasant good evening to all the participants who have made their presence felt this evening by attending last session of the Virtual National Summer School 2020, organized by Youth Bar Association of India. I, Shweta Pandey, would like to thank Mr. Sanpreet Singh Ajmani, Sir, National President, Youth Bar Association of India, for providing me this opportunity at moderating today's session, and I feel privileged at having none other than Ms. Aishwarya Bharti ma'am, recently appointed Additional Solicitor General of India. Heartfelt congratulations to you, ma'am, for this honorable appointment. Mr. Sanpreet Singh Ajmani did his law from Law College Dehradun and is currently the National President of YBAI, a registered body and an organization that stands to the public good by involving young lawyers from across the country. Coming on to Aishwarya ma'am, though she needs no introduction yet, it is my sheer privilege at giving a brief account of her journey. Miss Aishwarya Bhati hails from Jodhpur, Rajasthan, where she studied law. Post her graduation, she started her practice at the Apex Court in 1998. She has been an active voice at the SC Bar Association, and that translated to her being secretary of SCBA on 2 occasions. Ma'am is also an advocate on record, and in 2019, she was designated as a senior advocate, and also in this process went on to become the first woman from Rajasthan at achieving this honor. Her relentless hard work and dedication to her craft has garnered her an honorable place in the legal profession, and her grace and poise give real inspiration to budding lawyers. Thank you so much, ma'am, for accepting our invitation. Moving over to our today's theme, which the participants would be acquainted with. However, I would again refresh our memories by stating that today's session would deal with mediation and what are the existing laws and how it can be made more effective. It is widely accepted that mediation as a dispute resolution mechanism is on the rise, and it actually creates a positive impression upon the parties concerned because of its amicable perspective. Yet, mediation is still not given its due importance, and for the reason it is important to relook at the mediation so as to make it more effective. Participants are requested to pose their questions once the session ends. Without further ado, I would request Aishwarya ma'am to begin with her talk. Please, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Shweta. It is indeed a great privilege and honor for me to come back to the Youth Bar Association. Sanpreet ji, Harshin ji have been such wonderful colleagues and friends for me. What a dynamic couple they are. Sanpreet ji has unending energy, and he finds when I saw the initial posters, and he sort of takes me as part of the team also. I'm not that young a lawyer, but I'm one of the younger seniors, you can say. So that's why he keeps me in his important projects, initiatives, and I feel really privileged that, he involves me in most of the things that he does. And to the extent that his team, Rahul ji, has been so kind, he has actually done the research of all the legislations that exist in India on mediation and sent it to me. He sent me with a message saying that, ma'am, you might not have found time, so I have researched this for you. What a wonderful thing that you get invited to a project and you get a research to, to start your, to really take that session. And I could not join any of the sessions of this summer school that happened, but the overview that I've heard from Sanpreet ji, and of course the galaxy of amazing speakers that you have had, I think it must have been phenomenal. And I'm sure many of us who did not watch it the first time would take the time to watch it in our free time on the YouTube or other Facebook channels, wherever Sanpreet ji would have and his team would have posted it. So it gives me great privilege and honor again, really, to be with you all and try and finish it. So I mean, I was not really sure about the magnitude of, the topics that have already been covered. I did do some preparation on different aspects of mediation, of course, focused on what is required from me with regard to the existing legislation and the way forward. But more than the preparation that I have done, I think I want to start with the experience that I have had. So let me take you through the legislation, because that will have a broad framework of what we have in India. And then let me give you some of my experiential learnings. I'm not really a trained mediator. I've not been trained as a mediator, but I have ended up mediating in some matters. I was appointed as a mediator on the floor of the court, once by Justice Korean Joseph, once by Justice Karju, and on several other occasions also. And I think mediation is something that lawyers have resisted for a long time. Lawyers have felt that if the mediation starts happening, then litigation will reduce and their work will reduce. But I think it's very important for all of us to understand that we are stakeholders in the system of justice delivery. If our system does not work with the efficiency, with the dynamism that is required from it, then the system is collapsing. And if we can't give dispute resolution of all forms to everyone, it's not like everyone will settle in mediation. People, when they come for litigation, they are already they've taken hard stands against each other, so it's very difficult to crack them with mediation or try to show them the correct perspective in which they can think of a mediation in that set of frame of mind. But it is important for us to understand that we need to be stakeholders in it. We, as students of law, as practitioners of law, as people who are interested in justice delivery system, who are interested in success of the system, need to embrace the system of mediation more than anything else. If we don't have people sorting out their disputes or bringing their disputes in the courtrooms, the other alternate will be that they will want to settle their disputes on the roadside. And that is going to be a very, very dangerous trend, which will spiral us down as a democratic republic, and which we cannot afford to have. So let me take you, so that's the significance of mediation to my mind. That's what I feel, and that's why I feel that all of us, we should not feel apprehensive about mediation, that it's going to take away work. No, it's not going to take away work. It's only going to have more footfall in the justice delivery system. So interestingly, before this research was done for me by Rahul ji and his team and some of my colleagues in the office, I did not really realize that mediation was so well ingrained in the Indian legal system also. I had an impression that the amendment in the CPC that happened in 2002, which brought in section 18, which brought in that amendment in section 89 of the CPC, included mediation in justice delivery system in a formal manner for the first time. Of course, we all knew that the personal laws, matrimonial laws, they have aspects of mediation, but it is interesting to note that mediation has been an integral part of many statutes in our country. So starting from the Industrial Disputes Act of 1947, section 4 specifically requires, it actually places a duty to mediate and promote a settlement of industrial disputes, because industrial disputes are essentially between employers and employees. So that system of mediation is already ingrained there. Then 2002 is the amendment that came in the CPC in section 89, read with order 10, rule 1A, which required pending matters to be referred for alternate dispute resolution, whether by way of mediation, conciliation. And here, now because of this, we have seen that in practice, every court now has mediation centers, or even if they don't have a proper full-fledged administrative setup of a mediation center, there are trained mediators everywhere in all courts, and those trained mediators are used on time-to-time basis whenever matters are referred to them for mediation. And the courts can refer the matters for mediation at any stage in the litigation. So this has been the focal point of mediation being included in the justice delivery system at different stages of the litigation. Then section 442 of the Companies Act 2013, this also provides for mediation and conciliation. It has specific rules also which were framed in 2016, qua mediation and conciliation rules, which provide for referral of disputes to mediation by the Company Law Tribunal and Appellate Tribunal. Then there is Micro, Small and Medium Enterprises Development Act. So this is MSME industries. This act also mandates conciliation whenever any dispute arises on payments of MSMEs. Then there is, of course, Hindu Marriage Act, Special Marriage Act. This always had, courts across jurisdictions, across geographies, across different countries have always felt that matrimonial disputes are something which are interpersonal disputes, and these disputes must be resolved in the setting of a mediation rather than being brought into the adjudicatory process, the formal adjudicatory process. Of course, the experience has shown that, because it's a relationship of love, when this relationship falls apart, it becomes really bitter. So this is a relationship where litigation is not very, anyways, all litigation is, is difficult, but matrimonial litigation becomes even more difficult because parties cannot get their emotions out of it. And because I feel that it's a relationship of love, the fight is also fought with that love, and that, that bitterness is too much in matrimonial matters. And here I would like to give you an example of the mediation that I did for a couple where I was in the court waiting to appear in my matter in Justice Korean Joseph's court, and there was a matrimonial dispute. Husband and wife on either sides, both had one child each. The husband had the son and the wife had the daughter, and they'd been staying apart ever since the son was elder, ever since the daughter was born. Son was about 10 years old and the daughter was about 7-8 years old. So ever since the daughter was born, they had been staying separately, and the siblings did not know each other. They did not even, they were acting like strangers to each other. So because they never met each other, or, they met only at the time of the birth of the girl. So they said that it was a bitter matrimonial dispute, qua custody, etc., everything. So Justice Korean Joseph felt that an effort should be made, because here there are 2 children to the marriage, and even if they separate, husband and wife, even if they separate, the children will never get to know each other, that they have siblings, and the value, the strength, the gift of having a sibling is too precious, and that should be saved. Anyways, when children are there, courts go extra mile, they go extra length to see that some kind of reconciliation can happen between the parties. So I was appointed. The court said, okay, why don't you go and try? And so we tried across several days. I took them out with me, helped them to communicate. First, I took both the children with me. And the children who had never met each other, who were acting as strangers to each other, of sitting in a restaurant, I just got them some nice things to eat, send their parents away. I said, I don't want you here. I want to see how the children are, what is their chemistry. I still have beautiful pictures of them on, with me, and they were so good. They gelled automatically, so instinctively, so naturally they came together and they started gelling. It was a beautiful relationship, beautiful association. And the parents had been fighting. Of course, the parents were not seeing eye to eye, but they were happy to separate these 2 beautiful children and they would have grown up without actually getting to know each other. And but the parties were so bitter with each other that they were not seeing it. They did not want to still see it. And in fact, Justice Korean Joseph had to threaten them at a one point that I'm going to take both the children away from both of you. You guys want to fight till you carry on, but I'm going to take the children, and both the children will be put in one boarding school so that the children at least have each other. And they will spend half holidays with mother, half holidays with father. And that is the arrangement that he's going to do. Of course, so you need a little bit of a sanction from the court to say that if you're not going to do this, I'm going to do that. And another occasion was, was also a similar matrimonial matter. But yes, it is possible for people to settle. And I feel that, my experience mediating with my clients, I always tell my clients that, when you are coming to the court, especially matrimonial clients, there is something called as a Pyrrhic victory. When you are fighting these battles, even if you succeed at the end, they're like Pyrrhic victories, because the price that you have to pay for winning that case, you have already lost a lot in trying to win that case. So these are certainly relationships which should be settled by mediation. And often, mediation does not happen initially when the wounds are raw. When there is, they feel there is betrayal, there is bitterness, so much of harshness between the parties in the beginning that sometimes mediation, in fact, oftentimes mediation does not happen at the first instance, but there is something called as a litigation fatigue. When parties are have been litigating for some time, then they both have litigation fatigue, and they realize that there's really no sense to it, and that litigation fatigue actually focuses them to have some kind of a settlement. And these settlements then they become part of the judgment of the court. They become part of the order of the court. They are enforceable as orders of that court. So the experience with mediation where parties have chosen to settle is very, very good. They can move on with their lives and actually, leave all the bitterness behind. So we often tell our clients that you can either agree to agree or agree to disagree. Either which ways, it's going to make your life better. Some of the other provisions are, so we saw, this was the personal laws, marriage laws. Even RERA, the Real Estate Regulation and Development Act that came in 2016 for the builders, to provide some kind of a succor to homeowners who were getting duped or getting mired into the vicious cycle of problems with regard to their real estates, where huge promises were made that you're going to have this kind of a condominium, etc. But it was all turning out to be eyewash and starry promises without any reality. So this regulation came in that background. Even this regulation provides for amicable conciliation of dispute between the allottees and the promoter or the builders. Of course, the Legal Services Authority Act of 1987, which is a brilliant piece of legislation. This actually brought in, the directive principle of legal aid was brought into a statutory mechanism in 1987. And we have at the national level, NALSAR. They have been doing incredible job. The head of NALSAR, the National Legal Services Authority, is always the Chief Justice of India. There are state legal services authorities where always the Chief Justice of the State High Court is the head of the state legal services authorities. And every district court in the country has a legal aid, legal aid committee or legal aid clinic. And now even many municipal courts are having that. So this is a framework that has made justice accessible, that has allowed people of all economic classes and all economic stratas to have access to justice. And for women and children, they don't even look at the economic strength. Otherwise, it depends on the economic capacity of the party. There is also now middle income group legal aid societies under the aegis of NALSAR and state legal services authorities, which allows people who are middle income group people also to have that. And for legal services authority to have, to promote settlement of disputes by way of arbitration, negotiation, and conciliation takes this whole process of mediation to a new level. Because you would have seen that every now and then, under the aegis of NALSAR or state legal services authorities, lok adalats are held in different courts. Almost once, the COVID times has put an end to all of, at least stalled everything. but Lok Adalats used to be held every at least 2 monthly or quarterly in the Supreme Court, in high courts across the country, in other courts, for small traffic challans, for electricity violations, for income tax violations, etc. So Lok Adalat has become a norm, and Lok Adalats have become a place where people, their cases are listed and they come there, and it's a settlement where and it's interesting, when Lok Adalats happen, it's actually the judges who act like mediators. So it's the sitting judges. They don't sit on their chairs. It's very interesting. They don't sit in their uniform. They sit in civilian clothes without their band and gown. They come and sit where the courtmasters sit, just next to the clients, in front of the clients, and they actually help the parties to to negotiate, to settle. And a large number of cases do get settled under the Lok Adalat system, which is very, very heavily promoted by our legal services authorities. And once the judges are sitting there, so like I said, little carrot, little stick, it helps the parties to settle better in that kind of a setting. So that is that. Then, of course, the POSH Act, the Protection of Women from Sexual Harassment at Workplace, that act is of 2013. That also, these are sensitive areas. You can't really mandate a mediation in a case where a woman has undergone sexual harassment. So here it is at the request of the aggrieved party. So the provision of settlement and mediation is there at the request of the aggrieved woman. If she wants to do so, so the option is available to her. Of course, the Consumer Protection Act, the new Consumer Protection Act, that of 2019, has a whole chapter, chapter 5, I believe, which are sections, specifically sections 37, 38, etc., which require mediation, settlement, because these are consumer disputes, and pendency of consumer disputes has become another red herring in our legal system. Then the Arbitration and Conciliation Act, part 3 of that also mandates settlement. So what it mandates is that if the parties arrive at a settlement, that settlement agreement will have the same mandate as if the arbitral court has passed an arbitral award. So if the party is in an arbitration, they come to a settlement and they present that settlement has the same sanctity and it can be enforced in the same manner. Then of course, yes, of course, the Singapore Conventions, which are the most respected conventions. You are also, I believe that you have some collaboration with the Singapore agreements also on this, the summer schools that you are doing. They are the most respected world over. Internationally also, mediation is given a very high. In fact, let me tell you, criminal, you have already had one session on with Tulsi sir and I think Justice Lokpal Singh Sanpreet ji mentioned. Yes, so plea bargaining was something that was included quite recently, and plea bargaining was otherwise not available. It was felt that it is abhorrent almost to think that that a crime can also, you can settle a crime also, and people felt that the concept of blood money, so that you are committing a crime and then you pay blood money to mitigate that crime. But no, that is not plea bargaining. You had a huge detailed discussion on that, but I want to give you, so this was included in 2005 amendments in the criminal law amendment of 2005. But Justice Deepak Gupta, who recently retired from Supreme Court, he was narrating one of his experiences where he went to some on a study tour to some of these European countries, and they were undertaking a study as to why their conviction rates have come down from 97% to 95%. Can you imagine 97% conviction rate? It is unheard of. So Justice Gupta said we were very, very curious that 97% it has come down 2%, then, and you are having an inquiry or a study on it, that it's how it has come down 2%. So is it, I mean, is your data fudged? How are you doing it? Why are you so conviction oriented? Of course, European system does not have, most European countries do not have adversarial system in criminal law like we have. They have inquisitorial system of criminal law. But that apart, so he was curious that what is the reason this was looking, the data was looking very striking. So then he got to know that out of all the criminal cases that are filed, there is less than 40% cases that are actually taken to trial. 60% cases are not even taken to trial, because at a pre-trial stage, to give you an example, you would have all seen Suits or, Boston Legal, or read any of those lovely novels that we all read before becoming lawyers. You would have seen that in the developed world, the mechanism is like that. Before going into the trial, the DA actually offers that I'm offering you this sentence. If you want, you take the sentence. Otherwise, you go to trial and then you take the risk of going to whatever sentence you. So it's not like you pay and you go scot-free. It is like you bargain for sentence. That, okay, conviction is going to be there. The likelihood of conviction is very high. The investigation has already shown that there's so much of material against you. Now, if you get into the trial, then you are exposing yourself to a very high punishment, and maybe you can get slightly lesser. So maybe, a third degree murder, you can get a plea bargaining to a second degree murder and get a lesser sentence. So like that, the concept of plea bargaining is there. And now coming to the way forward, I think the way forward is our lessons that we have seen from the best practices, from the actions that have happened. I think most important thing is we shouldn't take, the process of mediation and conciliation should not be a one-time measure, should not be a measure that you just try at one stage of litigation and then you leave it at that. Sorry, it's not worked. No, we have seen from our experience that mediation is something that should happen at a pre-trial stage, at the stage when the case is actually filed, before it goes to the court at all for notice. There should be a notice. Now, in some cases, Tisajari courts have also started giving those kind of notices that, especially in negotiable instrument cases, etc. They give the notices come to clients like that you could try the conciliation and you could pay there and, settle the whole case. And so that should be first stage. All cases should have a mandatory screening to go through the process of mediation at that stage. We will have to build robust mechanisms of mediation, and we will have to have mainstream lawyers, mainstream stakeholders of justice taking interest and becoming part of the mediation and conciliation process. It can't be that it operates in one small corner of the court where mainstream lawyers don't want to go, they don't want to take interest, and they feel that it is hazardous to their job or their profession to be getting into mediation. No, mediation is something that everyone, it should be mandatory for everyone to go into, and at different stages. So if the case has gone on for 1 year, there should be a mandatory mediation again. Go back to mediation, see if you can settle now. Can't settle, okay, come back. After so at different stages, I'm just suggesting 1 year or 2 year, but maybe it could be stage based, that, after filing the written statement, after issues are framed or before issues are framed, when evidence is examined, the whole process of trial should be ingrained into multiple options of mediation and conciliation being exercised, because often clients, and even at the appellate stage, it should not be that, okay, somebody has lost or succeeded in the case at the trial court level. Now the appeal is pending, so the matter is already over and now no need to settle. No, settlement should be part of the process, even at the appellate stage, even at the Supreme Court stage, because parties often, like I said, that term of litigation fatigue. Sometimes parties have to feel that litigation fatigue to actually get into mediation. Either you see the merits of it, or you just get fatigued by litigation and then you see the prospect of it. The processes that we have are very robust in the sense that, it's very secret, not really secret in the sense that there is anything secretive about it, but the fact that you can openly negotiate. Whatever happens in the mediation can never be quoted in the court. So if the mediation works, there is a full settlement. If the mediation doesn't work, then there's just a failure report that this has failed and it's not working. Then you can't say that, oh, he offered this much and I offered this much and it broke at so-and-so point. So I feel that the processes are good, the mechanisms are good. We just need to have the statutory guideline to have it at different levels, and we need all hands on the deck. We need everyone who is, who's a participant in the justice delivery system to become a stakeholder in the process of mediation. Maybe we could have like we have the panels of amicus curiae in the court, or volunteer lawyers who do legal aid work. We could have volunteers for that mediation, and that could circulate and rotate. The initiative is being taken right from the top, from the highest level. The initiative is being taken, so it needs to grow and progress to everyone. So those were some of my thoughts. I think I've taken a lot of my time. Also, we can have some question answers or discussions if everyone likes. Thank you very much.
Over to you, Shweta. Okay.
Harshit, please unmute your mic and ask your question, ma'am.
Harshit, you can unmute yourself and ask the question. Harshit Patra.
A very good evening, Aishwarya ma'am. So ma'am, the United Nations Convention on Enforcement of Mediated Settlement Agreement, so called as Singapore Convention, will be affected from 12th of September 2020. And India is a signatory to the said convention, having signed the same along with 45 more countries. So India has not yet ratified the same convention. And in view of the new normal these days, if a statutory backup comes by way of an enactment or ordinance by the President of India giving reference to the said convention, would that mean that India has ratified the convention, or would that require yet to undergo the procedural ratification, is my question to you, ma'am.
Even if an ordinance comes, as students of law, we can just dissect it, that even if an ordinance comes, then ordinance will have a temporary life. It's not like it's going to have an unlimited life. It's only the parliamentary legislation that has to be brought in for a statutory framework to be in place, which is not temporary. Ordinance cannot be for all times to come. So temporarily it will be taken as a ratification, but of course it will have to be substantiated by a parliamentary law.
That's right. Thank you so much, ma'am. Also, I would want to know that whether the principle of making domestic mediation settlement be enforceable as per the Rule 10C of the said convention. If you are aware of, it says that the settlement agreement shall have the same status as that of an arbitral award and can be executed as the decree of a court. So once that convention is in place and the ordinance is passed, what are your views on this?
So Harshit, if you notice that the Arbitration Act already has provisions for that. It says that if the parties to the arbitration arrive at a settlement agreement, it will have the same sanctity as an arbitral award. But that is only going to be qua the arbitration matters. For everything else, wherever mediation has progressed into a settlement, we will have to ingrain it with some kind of a decree of affirmation by the court for it to really have a sanctity of sanctity of going back for execution or going back for contempt. Basically, see, just to give you an example, when the Constitution was made, Baba Sahib Ambedkar was asked which is the article which you think is the most important article in the Constitution. And when you ask somebody who's been the architect of such an amazing document, which is your favorite, I mean, it's like asking a mother who has 24 children, who's your favorite? You can't say. But Baba Sahib said, and Baba Sahib said, Article 32 is my most favorite provision, because I feel that, by making a violation of fundamental rights, that remedy itself is a fundamental right. So the crux here is, if the remedy, ubi jus ibi remedium, if the right is there and the remedy is not provided, even today we see in our litigations, we have seen, many times panchayat settlements are there, or, family settlements are there, but then litigation is going on for 25 years, 30 years over that. So those settlements, we will have to have a mandatory framework at the time of settlement itself. It becomes a, it's brought in as, and it is made a order of the court, whichever court has jurisdiction, so that the parties cannot resile from it at their own sweet free will later on. So the mechanism will have to be ingrained with decrees of competent courts of jurisdiction qua those disputes. That's what I feel.
That's right. Thank you so much, ma'am. I believe the same, that until this is done, people wouldn't be having as much as faith in mediation as arbitration. So I think that's the need of the hour. Thank you so much, ma'am, for this wonderful answer of yours.
Prithvi, please unmute your mic and ask the question. Prithvi, are you there?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, please.
Good evening, ma'am. Ma'am, my question is, are there any fields on law, like any types of cases where there should not be mediation?
See, there are Supreme Court judgments on that. Actually, there are Supreme Court judgments that say what are the cases where mediation should happen. It's nothing like these.
Mediation should not happen.
Yes, that's what I'm coming to that. So there are no judgments that, you shouldn't do mediation in this kind of cases, but by and large, cases which are, essentially these are criminal cases, which are, crimes of such a magnitude and such a propensity that they are taken as an offense against the society, and any kind of settlement in those offenses will become counterproductive. Otherwise, we have seen that even where now the legislative framework is there in so many acts, but even before this legislative framework was there, the courts have always encouraged mediation between parties, no matter what is the kind of dispute. In fact, in one judgment, Supreme Court very interestingly said that when you facilitate mediation, the parties become partners in solution rather than partners in problem. So when they are litigating against each other, they are partners in problems, and when they become part of the mediation, they become partners in solution. So solution should be found everywhere, but essentially more heinous offenses are mediation is a taboo in more heinous criminal offenses, apart like terrorist activities or hijacking matters or showing extreme mental depravity, those kind of crimes. But again, there also it should not be understood that a mediation or a plea bargaining will mean a complete scot-free. It will all mean that there is a bargaining qua the sentence. Plea bargaining is never qua conviction or acquittal. Plea bargaining is always qua sentencing of that offense.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Arijit, please unmute your mic and ask your question.
Yeah, good afternoon, ma'am. My question is that don't you think that the bar and the bench should take more initiatives to make the advocates aware or train them regarding how mediation should be conducted, or how we can be a process in active process in how we can
I feel that is the single most important thing that is required to actually make mediation and conciliation successful. If we are able to, and that is why I started with that and highlighted at different levels that, sometimes we feel that, if we are going to, partake in mediation, then we are taking people away from adjudication, we are taking people away from justice delivery system. We have to shed that, and that's not reality. That mindset is wrong. We need, work is not going to go away if we are able to. Today, people don't want to come to courts. They don't want to come to courts because in India, it is said that the definition of infinity is a case that is pending in Indian courts. That is the way people laugh at us. That is the way world is laughing at us, the kind of litigation processes our processes have become. People who want to, who want to stop others. A genuine litigator wants to settle outside, and somebody who's not a genuine litigator, who wants to launch a malicious prosecution, wants to come into the system to become a speed breaker for somebody else. So our system has stopped generating confidence. We are suffering, our system is suffering from a huge existential crisis today. And once we realize that this crisis can only be mitigated if we become citizen-centric again. After all, what are we all here for? After all, what are we all students of law doing? What are we all, these courts, these judges, all of these glorious corridors, they are all for ensuring that justice to the citizen. We have to become citizen centric again. And it is common sense. It is like, it's the need of the hour. It is the crying need of the hour for all of us to understand and appreciate that this is the way forward. We have to integrate mediation into our system so well that the problem of delays which is eating our system like a termite, can actually also go away.
Okay, Ashutosh, please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Very good evening to Bhati ma'am. Ma'am, I have a question on plea bargaining. Ma'am, in plea bargaining process, any admission of certain thing by accused is subject to the disclosure in public domain?
It depends on where the disclosure is made. Because in a criminal trial, it is a public trial that is happening. If the trial is happening in a public domain, the constitutional the safeguard that is available to an accused is only not a right against self-incrimination. So he cannot, that is a provision that is available to him. But if during the course of the trial, if he chooses to say something that is incriminatory qua him, then obviously it can be taken. And if it is qua others, then it will have to be proven like the rule of the evidence.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Ashutosh.
Next question
Is
is
there
from
any
Clint
more
Kolop.
question?
Yes, Shweta, there is one question from Mr. Clint Kolopo.
Okay. Please unmute your mic and ask the question.
Yeah. Good evening, ma'am. Good evening, ma'am. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah, you audible.
Yeah, ma'am. My question to you is: can a government of India can come up with some legislation or an act wherein the laws relating to compensation, matters relating to compensation and alimony, can it be settled voluntarily to out of court settlement rather than party going into mediation, litigation?
See, understand one thing, Clint, we don't need laws to live our lives amicably. Laws, rights, these are all important. There's a very interesting saying in the matrimonial law that till the time there is love between the parties, they're not governed by any law. And as soon as the love goes out of the door, the law comes in from the window. So law has no business till there is love between the parties. What they want to keep, what they want to give, if they are parting amicably, what alimony they give, what maintenance they don't give is completely up to them. Law only helps when there is injustice. When somebody feels that there is injustice, then the remedy is available to them in law to have recourse for the rights that they are violated. But you don't need a law, to say that you can settle amicably. I mean, if Mia Bibi Razi, to kya karega Kazi?
Thank you, ma'am. Very well said.
Thank you.
Okay, Vishal, please ask your question.
Hello, ma'am. Good evening, ma'am. Ma'am, before I ask my question, I'm a big fan, ma'am. So, my question is, it's often said that lawyers are basically the main roadblock to mediation, and the rigid thinking of going towards litigation is what lawyers want. So the thing is, until unless the perception of lawyers change, going towards mediation it would be a roadblock. So how do we tackle something like that? Because according to what even people think these days, lawyers think these days, mostly what is what I know, that monetary terms will be something which really values to lawyers. If you go for mediation, you won't get the money that you might get into the litigation background. So can you please tell me something in regard to that?
So let me give you an example, Vishal. The initial years of mediation, It was Justice Ravindran in the Supreme Court, a wonderful, very, very, fine judge who actually took a lot of interest in mediation, and he spoke to the bar. That was the time then lawyers were being trained as mediators. And one of the first things that he said in his address was that, when a mall is being opened, somebody who has a shop there feels that if the next shop is coming, then it will be my competitor and, there'll be a problem. But actually, when more shops open in a mall or in a particular marketplace, like a community center, there's a couple of shops of garments, shoes, food, different options. One food outlet guy may think that the other guy is competitor. But by giving more options, you are allowing more footfall. So more people are coming. Maybe, in a family, the children want to have McDonald's. They don't want to go with the traditional Indian fare. But, the elders don't want to have McDonald's. They want to go have that only. But more people coming in, more options available to them. It's not like everybody is going to settle. Yes, you're right that lawyers have become a huge roadblock in it, and it's unfortunate that that's how it is. It has become, but we need to have more awareness. Things are changing. We need law students, to be better aware at the time of studying law itself, so that realize that it's not a threat. It's not really taking away anything from them. On the contrary, it is actually strengthening the system. And if the system is strengthened, then all of us are to gain from this. It will not be at anybody's cost.
Right. So according to your example, this would not result in monopoly, and it would be a competition out there.
No, not at all. On the contrary, we will have more people coming in for their disputes resolution. We will have less cases of street justice. We will have less problems of people taking law into their own hands because they don't have trust in the system. See what is at stake. Our very existence as a country, as a democratic republic country, is at stake. The very rule of law is at stake.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Yes, Kanika, you may ask a question. Kanika, are you there?
Good evening, ma'am. Ma'am, as you said, at times the litigation fatigue is the one factor which convinces the parties to go for mediation process. So my question is that how pre-litigation mediation will happen? Also, according to you, what type of laws should be made to make mediation process more common to the parties to the dispute, so that parties prefer mediation rather than litigation?
So, I said that pre-litigation mediation or pre-trial or pre-issues or pre-trial, basically pre-trial mediation should happen, and at every stage also mediation should happen. We don't know when parties will settle. We don't know when they will be in that frame of mind that they see merit in mediation. So pre-trial is a good time to start, but then it must go on because often parties may feel very bitterly about each other, but they then settle ultimately by litigation fatigue. I'll tell you, one of my clients who settled a matrimonial matter after fighting it bitterly for 25 years, settled in Supreme Court and said that, I feel that I'm going to just, pay whatever she's asking for, not because I feel she deserves it, but because I feel that my time that I'm going to waste or I have wasted so much is worth far more. So whatever they think, I mean, if that is their thought, like Sanpreet ji mentioned, somebody wants the orange to make the juice, somebody wants the orange peel to do something with the peel. He doesn't want the juice at all. We don't know what works for whom at what stage. That is why we need to have at multiple levels and not just at one level and, done with it. Also, I think we don't really need laws too much to strengthen the mediation system. We need trained mediators. We need all stakeholders of justice delivery system to be partaking in that system. And we want very efficient. If you see the Delhi High Court Mediation Center, it is one of the best mediation centers of the country. Even in COVID times, I believe that Delhi High Court has started the system of e-Samadhan. So their Samadhan is the name of their mediation center. And now because there's, things are happening over virtual mediums, they have started e-Samadhan to empower people to use the virtual platforms even for mediation. So it's not so much about laws. One of my colleagues did a research of what is the kind of technology that is being used in mediation. And it is surprising, countries across the world are using such complex and such extensive technologies like, artificial intelligence, blockchain, which is blockchain is that web currency, that cyber currency. I'm forgetting the name, but blockchain is something that was cryptocurrency. But blockchain was something that was used in cryptocurrency and made famous there. That is the technique that is being used for mediation in countries across the world. Chatbots, which is completely based on artificial intelligence, or different many different mediums which are being used. So mediums can vary on the basis of what is the kind of dispute, where it needs to happen. Mindset is the most important battle that we need to fight, and mindset of stakeholders in the system. They should believe, and they should sincerely believe, that this is the need of the hour to strengthen our own system and actually give relief to the citizen.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Okay, Harshit, you may ask your question.
I think this would be the last question to be put to you for the session. So, ma'am, talking about ADR methods and comparing mediation to arbitration. So arbitration has proved to be very expensive. If you see that arbitration centers and everything. So even if mediation tomorrow takes the place of arbitration, how can it be cost effective for parties to participate in mediations more?
So I believe, Harshit, that mediation is not going to take the place of arbitration. Arbitration has a different different specter in which it operates. These are essentially commercial contracts or trade and commerce, economic related issues where the parties have, yes, it is a limb of alternate dispute resolution, but it operates in somewhat little different kind of and you're right. To start with, arbitration was, conceptualized and contemplated as something that is going to be time effective, cost effective, and give a succor to the parties at the earliest. But over the years, arbitration is proving to be very lengthy. Arbitration is proving to be quite expensive. And I think it's important for the arbitrators to really pull their socks, because if they don't, then things are going to go out very quickly from there also. It's not like people prefer arbitration over going to courts, but they prefer that because it's fast. It's supposed to be fast. It's supposed to be quick. And because it's fast and quick, it's supposed to be, you're supposed to pay less money for it. Mediation will operate, I feel, in more, interpersonal issues, interpersonal disputes. Let's see, I think, to start with, it's going to be like this, and let's see where we can take it. Sky is the limit. Ultimately, because arbitration is not, though it is an arm of alternate dispute resolution, but it's adjudication. There, it's not win-win for both. Arbitration is also, at the end of it, the arbitral award will give to somebody and not give to somebody. So, but mediation, both win. That is the difference between mediation and arbitration.
That's right. That's right. No, but if we talk about per session, if there is something per session cost which is related in arbitration, and if it happens so similarly in mediation, it is going to be per session. I am having a session with one party first, and then I'm having a second party session, then I'm having a joint session. So if the cost that ways can increase, if you see it from what I'm trying to elaborate here. So how can it be made cost effective so that parties, because ultimately if parties are looking for any sort of resolution, I think mediation can also be regularized by enforcing it, the settlement agreements and everything. I think one thing which people are going to consider is its cost effectiveness, for which I think arbitration is proving to be very expensive. So what are your suggestions that if tomorrow mediation comes in, how can it be made cost effective in your suggestions, ma'am?
So mediation also today, also the way it is happening, either it is happening at these mediation centers which are annexed to the courts,
Right.
where there are trained mediators who are essentially lawyers who are taking these mediation sessions. They are very cost effective. There's nothing wrong. I mean, there's hardly any price to the party at all. Then because they are acting under the Legal Services Authority framework, and there's sufficient funds that are statutorily available to them. So it does not pinch the parties. I don't think the parties have to pay anything to go into the mediation centers, which are court annexed. But when you are choosing a mediator, who is maybe a renowned or an acclaimed person, a retired Supreme Court judge, retired High Court judge, somebody, then he is spending time over it. If you're choosing somebody out of that mechanism, then you have to pay for his time. But it will still work out to be cheaper, because if you are not adhering to that, then you are spending, there's a money value of time. You will be spending 10 years into litigation, fighting over, wasting your time, effort, energy, money to the lawyers and litigation fees, everything. So it's still much cheaper. And the mediation centers which are in the court, they don't even charge anything.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am, for such an informative section. And I will like to call Sanjeev sir to conclude this session.
Before I request my friend Abhijit to propose vote of thanks, I would like to demonstrate the process of mediation with the help of 3 contingencies where the mediation has worked like a magic to resolve the disputes. The first contingency was where the mediation failed. The court referred the matter to the mediation center and it was failed. Rahul, can you just show the slide of that Amarjeet Singh matter? No, Rahul, this is the last slide which you have to show. The first is the order passed by the Honorable Supreme Court in Amarjeet case. No, the first one. Not this one. Right. So in this matter, I was assisting my senior, Mr. Jitendra Mohan Sharma, sir. And if you see from the first paragraph, they say the court records, although a report has been submitted by Supreme Court Mediation Center that the parties could not arrive at any settlement, Mr. Jitendra Mohan Sharma, senior counsel, learned counsel for the petitioners, after seeking instructions from so and so, made yet another offer for settlement. So sir has rightly concluded in his session that he gives a report that the mediation failed at this stage, and ultimately with the intervention of the court, this matter was settled. The parties were litigating for more than 10 years in this matter, and finally they gave a proposal and matter was settled with the efforts of with the intervention, kind indulgence of the court. Now the second contingency was where the court has no solution for the dispute. Rahul, can we have the next slide? In the adjudicatory process, not this one, the High Court one. In this, the Honorable High Court, while hearing a habeas corpus petition filed by the wife, appointed a mediator to sit along with them, not this one, Rahul, the order passed by the Honorable High Court, Justice Rajiv Sharma order. Rahul, can we have that?
So this is the one that was passed by Justice Rajiv Sharma.
No. This is passed by Honorable Supreme Court, the second one. This is passed by Justice N.V. Ramana. I'm asking the one which has been passed by Justice Rajiv Sharma.
The one I'm sharing on the screen is by Justice Rajiv Sharma.
Okay, but I can see the order passed by Honorable Supreme Court. Anyways, in this matter, there was a issue. A habeas corpus petition was before the Honorable High Court, and the corpus was produced. And when the corpus is produced, the petition does not survive any further. But the court, looking to the facts and circumstances, appointed one mediator, and I was blessed to mediate between the parties. And ultimately, the problem was the person, the husband, contracted the second marriage. And when the corpus was produced, there was a position when the court was having no solution to it. and ultimately with the intervention of the mediator, the matter was amicably settled. Now coming to the third contingency, where the mediator was obligated with the responsibility of adjudicating the dispute. This is the unique order, and kindly have Rahul. Yes. Learned counsel appearing for the parties submitted that their clients want to settle the dispute by way of mediation and request the Supreme Court Mediation Center may be directed for the said purpose. In view of the request made, we direct that the parties shall approach the Supreme Court Mediation Center on Friday for adjudication of the dispute. So ultimately, when the court has obligated the mediator to finally adjudicate the dispute, the responsibility of the mediator becomes more, and ultimately the matter was finally resolved, and the parties here were fighting for a shop for almost 3 decades, and they were cousin brothers, and after settling their scores, they realized that they were unnecessarily litigating for about more than 3 decades. Now concluding remarks, the last session was taken by Aishwarya ma'am. Aishwarya ma'am is my mentor, and she is a senior advocate in the Supreme Court, and now she would be serving as Assistant Solicitor General of India. I may take the liberty to congratulate you, ma'am. Ma'am is a role model for young budding lawyers and has always been a guiding light. She is vigilant and one of dynamic personalities in the legal fraternity. She has done a lot of praiseworthy matters, which include recent judgment on granting permanent commission to women officers serving in army. We are privileged to have you, ma'am. Now, before I request Abhijit to propose a vote of thanks, let me also propose a vote of thanks to Mr. Jitendra Mohan Sharma, sir, who is here with us, but he is hiding somewhere. Without you, sir, it would have not been possible for us to organize such a summer school. And Santan sir, Santan Krishnan sir, he has also been a guiding factor throughout. Mr. Anish Sharma, how can I forget you? You have always been inspirational for me. Mr. Karan Tugdal, Astha Basis, Harshit Batra, Pinky Bangar, Chetna Bhargav, Pawan Jodhpur, and last but not the least, Harsheen Anand. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, everyone. Now I request Abhijit to propose vote of thanks.
Evening to one and all. Hello. Good evening to one and all. It gives me immense pleasure to propose my vote of thanks. Propose my vote of thanks on the behalf of YBI in the capacity of Vice President of the Student Wing, in the presence of Aishwarya ma'am, my senior and our patron of YBI. This 10 days long session would have been incomplete without your presence and guidance, ma'am. Thank you so much for joining us in our initiative and guiding us on the aspects of mediation. I am also thankful to all the moderators who joined us to moderate our session. I thank Harsheen ma'am, Anjali ma'am, Pawanjit Kaur ma'am, Ayush Bharti sir, Pawanjit Kaur ma'am, Ayush Bharti sir, Chitrangna ma'am, Sweta Pandey ma'am, Tanvi ma'am, Rahul and Krishna Rastogi. I am also thankful to all the mentors of YBI who help us in making this a grand success. My special thanks to Mr. Sanpreet Singh Ajmani sir, who is a National President YBI, for making this 10 days program possible for all of us. Lastly, all the participants who participated very diligently and remain through this 10-day session. I hope it was very informative for everyone. Thank you once again. Stay safe, stay healthy. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so very much. It was an absolute honor. Bye. Bye, everyone.
Bye, ma'am.